He thought she'd crumble when he left her for another woman. She didn't beg. She just walked away, then built something so powerful his entire empire collapsed in her shadow. Now he's ruined. And begging at her door. They seated me by the window. Table for two. A bottle of Chateau Margaux already breathing in a decanter. The place cards hand-lettered, matte black with gold trim, read Miles and Lena Grayson. The hostess smiled too brightly. Celebrating something special tonight? I glanced at the time. 7:12 p.m. Yes, I said, folding my linen napkin across my lap. Our 7th wedding anniversary. She gave me that quick flicker of pity, the kind you recognize when someone mistakes your poise for loneliness. Then she backed away with the grace of someone trained to ignore the obvious. I had called earlier that morning to confirm our reservation. Miles had chosen this place years ago. The Turn, a rooftop fine dining spot he loved for the way it reflected in his wine glass during sunset. He used to say it made everything look cinematic. He hadn't answered my calls all day. The last message he sent was a curt text. Meeting went late. We'll explain later. Happy anniversary. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't even disappointed. That emotion had left me somewhere between month 3 and month 5 of realizing I was married to a man who only loved me when the lighting was good. What did surprise me, however, was the envelope waiting at home when I returned. It was already late when I got back. The sitter had left. The house was quiet except for the sound of the pool filter cycling and a soft classical playlist still playing from the kitchen speaker. Something from Miles's curated elevated dinner playlist. On the marble counter, propped up beside the untouched anniversary cake, sat an unmarked envelope. No stamp. No handwriting. Inside, a set of divorce papers. My name printed neatly in bold at the top. Lena Ray Grayson. I read every word. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even dramatic. The terms were dry, borderline generous. He offered me one apartment in Westwood, a modest joint account with around $600,000 in it, and a vehicle I didn't even use anymore. The rest, the house, the company, the investments were under his control. A note was attached on the last page. Typed, Lena, I know this isn't the way you wanted things to go. I'm sorry. I think it's time we both admitted we've grown apart. I'll always respect you, but I've made my decision. I'll be traveling for the next few weeks, but my lawyer is ready whenever you are. There's no rush. Miles. No signature. No date. No mention of Vanessa Quinn. I met Vanessa only once, at the company's holiday party last year. She was the event consultant. Brunette. Slim. Her child from a previous marriage sat quietly beside her in a velvet jacket while she made rounds like she owned the place. Miles introduced us as if she were some fascinating stranger, but his eyes never left her the entire night. She had that kind of pull, the soft, unbothered confidence of someone who knew she didn't need to compete. And just like that I knew. She wasn't just a fling. He was a return. The first love. The girl from his childhood. The one who'd once broken his heart. The one he couldn't resist trying to win again. I signed the papers the next morning. There was no ceremony to it. I sat at my desk in the guest bedroom, the one he said had too much of my energy to work in, and read through every clause like I was reviewing an ad pitch. Then I picked up my pen and signed. 3 clean strokes. No hesitation. Afterward I made myself tea. Pomegranate and rooibos. The kind he never liked. I texted his assistant. Please inform Mr. Grayson that I've signed and filed the documents. I won't be needing anything further from him. Then I packed. Not everything. Just what mattered. Files, hard drives, a small jewelry box with my mother's brooch in it, and the black book I used to track my own investments. Not his. My ones I started during our 3rd year of marriage when I realized Miles loved ambition more than partnership. My lawyer, a quiet genius named Simone Tran, called 2 days later. Are you sure you want to accept the offer as it is? We could push for more. No, I said. I want him to think I took less. There was a pause. Then Simone laughed. Noted. The news of our separation broke in the industry press a week later. Power couple no more. Miles and Lena Grayson file for divorce amid rumors of new romance. I didn't read the whole article, but I did see the photo. It was of us at a gala 2 years ago. He in a tuxedo, me in emerald silk. His hand was on my back. My smile was perfect. But in hindsight I looked hollow. I looked almost too good. Polished women are often the most abandoned. On the 10th day, the Westwood apartment key arrived in a small box. I walked in that evening and was greeted by blank walls and the kind of silence that tells you exactly how much a man thinks you're worth. But I didn't cry. I opened the windows, let the air in, pulled out the folder I had labeled FH Project, Confidential, and spread the contents across the floor. FH stood for Finch House, a boutique fund I had quietly begun drafting the year before. A venture platform focused entirely on investing in women-led branding studios and creative firms. The irony? Finch House was seeded using a sliver of the profits from the Grayson agency, specifically from accounts I brought in, managed, and saved. I didn't want revenge. I wanted power. The kind that didn't need announcing. That night, I got a call from Camille, my younger sister. "So, are you breathing?" "Better," I said, placing a mug of tea beside my laptop. There was a long silence. Does he even know what he lost? I looked around the empty apartment. He will. A week later, I was walking out of a quiet cafe in Santa Monica when I saw them. Miles and Vanessa. Hand in hand. She was laughing, radiant in her white trench coat. Her son skipped ahead, holding a paper airplane. Miles spotted me, stiffened. He didn't expect to see me this soon. Not looking like this, sharp blazer, sunglasses, portfolio under my arm. Vanessa turned. We locked eyes. She smiled like a woman who thought she'd won. I tilted my head and smiled back. Like a woman who had already left the game. I didn't respond to the headlines. I didn't speak to the press. And I most certainly didn't attend the Grayson agency's rebranding party, even though my name was still buried in the legal foundation of the company's earliest contracts. Instead, I poured myself into something else. Something quiet. Something permanent. Finch House. It began as a sketch in my notebook during our 4th anniversary trip to Tuscany. The trip Miles forgot to book until the week before, when I ended up reserving the hotel myself. While he schmoozed with investors on calls by the pool, I'd sat in the courtyard, drawing logos in a leather journal. A seed of an idea. A creative venture incubator, but for women like me, talented, strategic, invisible. The ones who did the real work while their partners stood on stage and accepted the credit. Women who'd been the brains behind countless agencies, only to be edged out when the spotlight came. I had written 2 words beneath the first sketch. Let them underestimate you. I used the modest sum Miles offered in the divorce to rent a small office space on the 5th floor of an old Art Deco building in downtown LA. 1 floor above a film restoration studio, 2 below a podcast collective. I liked the vibe, scrappy, creative, just raw enough. The plaque on the door read, Finch House Creative Fund. Founder, Lena Ray Harper. I dropped Grayson the same day the ink dried on our divorce. The funny thing about power? When you no longer care about appearances, it comes faster. 3 weeks into building Finch House, I received a call from Delilah Cho, a stylist turned creative director I once helped land her first magazine feature years ago. She'd heard I was doing something new and asked if we could grab coffee. Delilah showed up late in a silk bomber and matte red lipstick and ordered a matcha she barely sipped. Then, in the most casual tone possible, she said, "Miles offered me a consulting deal last week. I haven't responded." I raised an eyebrow. "And?" Delilah leaned in. "Depends. What are you offering?" I smiled. "Equity." He grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." By the end of the month, I had 6 women on board. Designers, strategists, photographers, all with niche followings and impeccable reputations. None of them knew I was working with Al Perrin, the founder of Vespera Capital, a silent investor who'd once mentored me when I was an intern and now managed over $500 million in creative sector assets. Al and I had crossed paths at a seminar in London years ago, where I had presented a case study on rebuilding visual brands for legacy fashion houses. I was still green then, but she remembered me. "You were the one with the notebook full of timelines and 10-year plans." Now she was back. When I reached out with my proposal for Finch House, she didn't even blink. "I'll fund the first round," Al had said. "But only if you let them think you're doing it alone." "Why?" "Because they'll underestimate you. And that's when we win." Meanwhile, Miles was busy curating his post-divorce glow-up. I saw the photos. Panel events, networking brunches, sponsored content with tags like #rebuilding, #co-founder energy, all wrapped in the same aesthetic filters we used at the Grayson agency. Funny. I remembered choosing those presets myself. I even named the main color scheme, Cinder plus Gold. He hadn't even changed the palette. Then came the news. Vanessa Quinn had officially joined the Grayson agency as creative director. The article quoted Miles saying something about honoring shared history and combining visionary minds. Translation: he couldn't handle running the show alone. He needed her, or the image of her, to make it all look effortless. But Vanessa wasn't a strategist. She was an image maker. Brilliant with aesthetics, yes. But she had no concept of budget caps, team hierarchies, or long-term brand infrastructure. She styled problems. She didn't solve them. And that's when I made my move. Avery James, the former CFO of Grayson Agency, and one of the few people Miles ever truly trusted, had been quietly laid off 6 months before our divorce. A restructuring, he told the team. In reality, Vanessa didn't like how often Avery challenged her creative expenses. I found Avery consulting for a wellness startup on LinkedIn. Do you still remember the systems we built? I asked. He smiled on the Zoom screen. Better than Miles does. Want to build something better? He didn't even hesitate. Send me the brief. By the end of the 3rd month, Finch House had acquired 5 startup clients from under Grayson Agency's nose, all signed through personal relationships I had cultivated during my marriage. The irony? Miles assumed those accounts stayed because of his charisma. He never realized the trust ran through me. Then came the real strike. Ember Goods was one of our earliest Grayson clients. A sustainable lifestyle brand led by 2 sisters. Smart, tough, and fiercely loyal. I helped them launch their first capsule line, designed their pitch decks, and got them a spot in Forbes Women in Business. They had stayed with Grayson out of habit. Until I made a call. I'm starting over, I told them. And I'd like to offer you equity in our first female-led brand portfolio. There was silence. Then one of the sisters, Jo, laughed. About time. I didn't need to take Grayson Agency down. I just needed to make it irrelevant. Let the house stand. Let Vanessa redecorate it however she wanted. Let Miles call himself CEO, while I built a new world beneath their feet. A few weeks later, Camille called me from the airport. I just saw Vanessa, she said, voice low. Where? Lax. She was boarding a flight to Austin with her son. Alone. I leaned back in my chair. She looked tense. Of course she did. Miles had posted something odd that morning. A black and white photo of a sunrise with the caption, "Sometimes we grow apart to grow alone. I'll always be grateful for the chapters we shared." He didn't tag anyone. But I recognized the format. He used the same template to announce client exits. It wasn't a breakup post. It was a brand announcement. By month 6, I had pulled 10 former Grayson clients into Finch House. The press began whispering about a new creative player. Lena Harper's name appeared in Fast Company. Elle stayed behind the scenes as promised. Delilah launched a capsule collaboration that sold out in 72 hours. Avery built us the leanest operations model I'd ever seen. Miles? He released a statement announcing temporary restructuring due to shifting market priorities. I didn't respond. I never even said his name again. I kept the original signed divorce envelope in a box labeled Artifacts, along with my old business cards, and the jade ring Miles gave me for our 3rd anniversary. The one he told me was for peace and power. It worked. Just not for him. It took 6 months after the divorce for Vanessa Quinn to settle fully into the chair that used to be mine. I don't mean the literal one. Though yes, Miles had replaced my ergonomic Eames replica with a velvet-backed statement seat that screamed, "I have taste and also no understanding of lumbar support." I mean the symbolic chair. The one that held the power. Creative director. Brand strategist. Client whisperer. Fire extinguisher. The person behind the curtain. The one who read pitch decks like poetry and rewrote taglines in the back of the car 5 minutes before meetings. The person everyone came to when they didn't trust Miles' gut, and needed actual insight instead. Vanessa thought it would be simple. She had the face. Though. The curated child who appeared at just the right time in just the right outfit. She posted carefully filtered shots of her new chapter on Instagram. Her bio read, "Creative Director. Vision Builder. Believer in full circle moments." Cute. Except full circle meant she was now seated in a space I had built with my bare hands. without ever acknowledging the person who held it before her. But karma, you see, is rarely loud. He's just efficient. It began with the Capstone pitch. Capstone was a mid-sized tech firm shifting toward lifestyle branding. I had helped nurture the account 2 years ago when they were still pitching health tracking bracelets. Under my guidance, they became a wellness ecosystem brand with a clean design language and real credibility. They were supposed to renew their annual with Grayson agency in June. Instead, I received a message from their VP of partnerships. "Lena, is it true you're building something new? We'd love to connect." I already knew what happened. Vanessa likely presented Capstone with a glossy new concept deck, full of serif fonts, earth tones, and vague phrases like intentional rebranding. She probably wore linen. She probably said alignment 4 times. What she didn't know: Capstone's CEO hated trends. He only trusted strategy backed by numbers. And I had built that foundation with him over breakfast meetings, budget breakdowns, and blunt honesty. He had signed because of me. He left because I was gone. 3 weeks later, Capstone publicly announced they were transitioning to a bespoke creative relationship with Finch House. The statement was clean. No drama. But in PR speak, it was an uppercut. I didn't gloat. Not publicly. But Delilah, bless her gossip-loving soul, sent me a screenshot of Vanessa's internal Slack message from a source I will never name. "We need to revisit our client onboarding language. The Capstone loss was unexpected but avoidable. Messaging needs to be clearer." Translation: I had no idea they were leaving. I don't know why. Someone fix this before I get blamed. Delilah replied with one emoji: wine glass. Isn't Bacchus cube? I know what it's like to be in that chair. To sit across from clients who don't trust your instincts. To second-guess every campaign idea. To pitch 12 taglines because you don't know which version of your voice will resonate. The difference is, I learned that discomfort through fire. Vanessa inherited it like a fashion piece. By month 7, I had pulled 10 clients from Grayson agency to Finch House. Quietly. One by one. No press. No blog post. Just the strategic reshuffling of relationships that should have never been taken for granted. The whispers started. A senior staff member posted anonymously on a forum for ad agency professionals. New creative director lacks internal understanding of legacy accounts. Morale is low. Vision is unclear. Someone replied. The founder's ex-wife just launched a competitor and is already poaching top clients. No one's saying it, but everyone knows. And that's when I knew. My silence had become louder than their performance. One morning I received an unexpected call. Not from a client. Not from a journalist. From Miles. I stared at the screen as his name blinked against the glass. I hadn't blocked his number. Not out of kindness, but because I wanted him to know I wasn't hiding. I let it ring 4 times. Then answered cool as water. "Lena." His voice was hoarse, like he'd just woken up or hadn't slept at all. "Is something wrong?" I asked. Pause. "Then, we lost Our Tech." Our Tech was a boutique techwear brand I'd helped secure last year, right before the divorce. "They said their vision no longer aligns with our current leadership," he muttered. "They're joining Finch House." I leaned back in my chair, one hand tracing the edge of my desk. "That sounds like a very intentional decision," I said. "Why are you doing this?" There was. The moment of truth. "I'm not doing anything, Miles," I said, voice flat. "I'm just running my own agency." "You're taking everything I built." "No," I corrected him. "I'm reclaiming what I built. You just assumed it was yours." He didn't call again. But 2 days later Vanessa did. She requested a meeting through my assistant. Said it was important and time-sensitive. Wanted to meet in person. I declined. She persisted. So I agreed. We met at a neutral location, a garden cafe in Brentwood. White parasols. Rose latte foam. Everything curated for an image. She arrived in muted tones and oversized sunglasses. Her fingers were covered in gold rings. I wore black and no makeup. She smiled as if we were old friends. I didn't return it. "I just want to clear the air," she began. "There is no air to clear," I replied, sipping my espresso. She shifted. "You're clearly succeeding. That's not in question." "Thank you. But I think we'd all be better off if we stopped playing tug-of-war over clients." I raised a brow. Is that what you think this is? She blinked. I'm not fighting for clients, I said. They came to me. I didn't chase anyone. She looked unconvinced. I'm offering you a proposal, she said carefully. A truce. We both operate in the same industry. We could agree not to step on each other's deals. Even support each other when possible. I almost laughed. You mean a non-compete that benefits you? Vanessa's expression tightened. I just think there's room for respect. Considering the circumstances. Respect. I echoed. You stood in my place while I bled quietly behind the scenes and now you want terms? Vanessa reached into her bag and pulled out a branded envelope. This outlines the proposal. I didn't touch it. Vanessa, I said softly, I think you believe this chair came with the respect I earned. But it didn't. And it never will. Then I stood. And left the envelope on the table. That week, 3 more team members from Grayson Agency sent me their resumes. One of them included a note. I never realized how much of the agency was you until you left. There's something about a public departure that feels like the first domino. You can pretend a company is thriving behind closed doors. You can control press releases, staff memos, and internal Slack messages. You can host branded panels and post LinkedIn articles about vision and resilience. But when a high-profile talent leaves, loudly, visibly, and strategically, you can't silence the questions anymore. And in Grayson Agency's case, the first domino had a name. Zuri Banks. Zuri was more than a client. She was a storm dressed in silk. A cultural curator with a social following that could sell out a lipstick shade in hours and crash a podcast platform with one teaser drop. I had met her when she was still a stylist's assistant, working backstage at runway shows and dreaming of creating her own luxury streetwear brand. We'd talked over cheap espresso in folding chairs. I had believed in her before anyone else did. When she launched her line Banks Theory, I offered to brand it for free as a passion project. Miles hadn't wanted to take her on. Too urban, he had said, not our aesthetic. I overrode him. Quietly. By year 2, Banks Theory had gone viral. Now it was stocked in 24 stores and worn by 3 A-list actors on their press tours. Zuri knew exactly who had made that happen. I hadn't reached out to her since the divorce. Not once. But she found me anyway. The text came on a Friday morning, short and blunt, just like her. Zuri, you free to talk? Got a situation. Miles isn't cutting it. I called her that afternoon. You built half of my brand, she said, skipping greetings. But Vanessa is treating me like a seasonal influencer. They pitched me a rebrand deck last week and, girl, it had beige hoodies. I laughed. Do I look like beige to you? Not even on your worst day. They've got me in boardrooms talking audience saturation, when we haven't even dropped phase 2. Lena, I'm drowning in buzzwords and poorly lit mood boards. What do you need from me? I need out. And I need you back. I paused. Are you sure? How yes, I'm sure. You were the only one who saw me as a brand before I even had one. I want you leading my next campaign. And just like that, the first domino fell. When the press release went live, it was clean but direct. Zuri Banks announces new partnership with Finch House. Time to build with the one who saw me first. The quote did its job. It lit a fuse. Grayson Agency went into panic mode. I know this because I still had one contact on the inside. She didn't feed me secrets. She didn't need to. All she sent was a screenshot from a Slack thread. Vanessa's name at the top. Zuri's departure was unexpected and deeply disappointing. We need to reinforce loyalty from our other top-tier clients. Begin outreach immediately. Lena Harper is clearly recruiting aggressively. I smiled at the phrasing. I hadn't recruited Zuri. She called me. But perception is power. And now the industry was watching. A week later, Zuri and I met in person for the first time in over a year. We sat in the corner of a private rooftop lounge overlooking downtown. You know you just made this a war, right? She said, sipping her sparkling water. I didn't start it. But you're damn good at ending things. She passed me her new concept sketches. Sharp, bold, full of heat. You said once, she began, that people like us don't need to break things loudly. We just need to build better. I nodded. That's still true. It's the only rule I live by now. We shook hands. No contracts that night. Just shared memory and shared revenge disguised as progress. The backlash hit Grayson within 72 hours. Zuri's exit triggered a chain reaction. Brands she had cross-promoted with, stylists who followed her, even a luxury accessories label that had been quietly scouting Finch House before finally making it public. Grayson tried to push out a campaign midweek featuring one of their tech clients. It flopped. The comments weren't subtle. Didn't Lena Harper used to handle these launches? Why does this feel unfinished? Bring back whoever used to write your copy. That same week, I received an email from Camden Doyle, founder of Verve Tech, a startup in Seattle I had helped rebrand during my last year at Grayson. He'd stayed loyal to Miles after the split. Now he was writing, "Lena, if Finch House is accepting tech accounts, I'd like to talk. We've been floundering without you." I didn't respond immediately. I let him sit for 4 days. Then on Monday morning I sent him a single line. "Let's rebuild it right this time." Meanwhile, Vanessa was scrambling. In an attempt to stabilize their image, she launched a podcast called The New Standard, a thinly veiled PR vehicle full of curated conversations about navigating creative leadership as a modern woman. The debut episode was an interview between her and Miles. He tried to sound polished. He tried to sound empowered. But the cracks showed. Especially when she said, sometimes building a company from scratch together really strengthens the creative relationship. Except I was the one who built it from scratch. Delilah sent me the link, of course. Her text. Who knew revisionist history came in podcast form? My reply. She should have titled it, The Woman Who Sat in My Chair. By the end of the month, 3 more talents left Grayson. 2 of them joined Finch House. One posted a photo of their new office on Instagram, tagging me with the caption, "The Real Creative Home." I didn't comment. I didn't repost. I didn't need to. The ripple had already become a wave. Miles? He was quiet. No public statement. No calls. No emails. Just absence. But I imagined the silence on his end wasn't peaceful. Because the thing about losing the woman behind the curtain is this. You start realizing how many rooms she lit for you. And how dark it gets once she's gone. The call came on a rainy Thursday. Los Angeles rain, which is to say dramatic, fleeting, and excellent for atmosphere. I was at the Finch House office reviewing pitch decks for a new creative tech venture out of New York. Delilah sat across from me, editing campaign shots for Zuri's next drop. "Do you ever feel like the past is waiting just around the corner?" she asked, sipping her lavender iced latte. I barely glanced up. "It's not waiting. It just knows where you live." Right then my phone buzzed. A known number. No voicemail. No ID. I almost ignored it. But something told me to answer. Lena Harper. Pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in years. Still picking up on the first ring. "You haven't changed." I stood slowly, walking toward the window as the rain dotted the glass. L. Perrin. Investor. Strategist. Power broker in 4-inch heels. And the woman who taught me everything I know about leverage. We met 8 years ago, back when I was a junior brand consultant scrambling to survive in a boardroom full of executives who mistook my politeness for ignorance. She'd come in as a guest speaker and taken one look at me and said, "Don't let them talk over you. Make them listen." We kept in touch. Quietly. She mentored me over coffee, email, late-night strategy breakdowns. Then I married Miles. She disappeared. I never asked why. Till now. "I heard about the Zuri campaign," Al said. "Congratulations." "Thank you." "And Vanessa's podcast." "Congratulations on that too." I haven't heard a more elegant PR mess since Gwyneth tried to trademark conscious uncoupling. I smiled. "I take it you didn't call to talk about trending interviews." "No," she said. "I called because your ex-husband reached out to me." That made me pause. What did he want? A bailout. I walked back to my desk on Saturday, and what did you say? I said I'd think about it. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Elle's voice was as smooth as ever. I wanted to see what you'd do first. And I think it's time we finally do this together. Publicly. By this, Elle meant war. She wanted to inject capital into Finch House. Not quietly like she had in the beginning, but openly. A headline deal. A press-covered strategic partnership that would shake the entire creative industry. Why now? I asked. Because he thinks the agency is still the goose. But you were always the one laying the golden eggs. I leaned back. So this is about revenge? No, she said. This is about accuracy. We met 2 days later at the Ivy. Elle wore a navy suit with stilettos sharp enough to slice egos. Her assistant placed a slim folder on the table between us. Inside, a draft proposal for a capital injection of $10 million into Finch House, at a valuation that would immediately rank us as one of the top 5 boutique creative firms on the West Coast. And your stake? I asked, flipping pages. Minority. I don't need control. Just a seat at the table. And in return? You get my name on your board, she said, sipping her espresso. And we finally turned this into what it was always meant to be, a legacy brand. For women who build everything and get left with nothing. I looked down at the final page. My name already typed. I took the pen from her hand and signed. The announcement hit the following Monday. Finch House secures $10 million growth investment from Perrin Strategic. Led by Lena Harper and Al Perrin, the deal cements Finch House's place in the future of brand innovation. LinkedIn blew up. Email offers poured in. Our waitlist for client onboarding tripled in a week. Miles went silent. Until the second call. It came the evening after the announcement. His name this time. Not unknown. I let it ring. Then answered. Wiles. You really partnered with Al Perrin? I didn't respond. He let out a sharp breath. She was supposed to invest in me. I reached out before the holidays. You should have followed up. I did. She ghosted me. Then maybe she heard what she needed. He fell quiet. Then voice low, why are you doing this? The question again. I'm not doing anything, Miles, I said. I'm just accepting the offers you used to ignore. Another pause. You know I loved what we built. No, Miles, I said softly. You loved standing on the stage. You loved the applause. I loved the building. His voice cracked slightly. I just didn't think you'd thrive. I offered. Without you. He didn't answer. So I hung up. 2 days later I received an invitation. Grayson Agency, Private Industry Mixer. Location, the Oren Room, Beverly Hills. Theme, new faces. New futures. Vanessa's name was at the bottom with a gold embossed header. I wasn't invited. Of course not. But Delilah was. And I had no problem using her +1. We arrived fashionably late. The room was a collage of soft lighting, floral installations, and polished desperation. Everyone was trying too hard to look effortless. Miles spotted us the moment we entered. He froze. Vanessa turned a second later. Her smile faltered. Delilah clinked my glass with hers. Ready for a soft coup? I adjusted my coat. Let's begin. I didn't approach anyone. I didn't network. I didn't pitch. But people came to me. One by one. Old clients. Junior creatives. Former contractors. All gravitating toward the woman who'd walked away and somehow become everything they wanted to be aligned with. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't take the mic. I just stood in the corner, composed and alert. Like a mirror. And let them reflect on what they'd lost. At the end of the night, as the crowd thinned, Vanessa approached. Lena. Vanessa. She glanced at the guests. Enjoying yourself? Immensely. She licked her lips. I assume you're here to recruit. Not at all. This isn't my audience. Oh. I leaned in slightly. Mine already left. She said nothing. I let the silence settle between us. Then I smiled faintly. Nice flowers. Zuri used the same florist last year. They've since moved to exclusivity with Finch House. And then I walked away. That night I got one final email from Elle. Subject, you looked like legacy tonight. 3 more brands confirmed onboarding for Q3. Miles. He's running out of things to lose. When someone's losing relevance, their first instinct is to reach for the loudest microphone. Vanessa Quinn reached for a magazine spread. Specifically, Creative State Weekly, a niche but respected media outlet known for profiling industry disruptors and agency innovators. It was the kind of publication that catered to other creatives, people who paid attention not just to brands but to who built them. Perfect for a reinvention piece. Or so she thought. The article dropped on a Wednesday morning. Delilah forwarded it to me before I even had my second espresso. Subject, OF. You're going to want to sit down. She wasn't wrong. The headline read, The woman redefining creativity post-divorce. Vanessa Quinn of Grayson Agency. I stared at it for a beat. Then opened the article. It was what you'd expect. A multi-page feature, pastel-toned photography, quotes arranged in digestible sound bites. Vanessa perched on a velvet armchair, mid-laugh, hair artfully messy, the accidental genius aesthetic dialed to 10. But it was the words that mattered. And some of them were interesting. When I stepped into a leadership role at Grayson, I inherited a fragmented brand. There was no clear vision, no cohesive voice. Fragmented? I read that line twice. The same fragmented brand that had signed 7 national campaigns the year before she walked in? But it didn't stop there. Miles had built something beautiful but lacked grounding. I came in and offered structure, substance, and a more modern creative philosophy. That sentence was salt-dusted. But then came the punch. The previous leadership was talented, yes, but often too emotionally attached to client relationships. Business requires boundaries. That's something women in power often forget, but I don't. That line set the internet on fire. Within hours, the comment section exploded. Is she talking about Lena Harper? Saying a woman was too emotional while you're literally sitting in the company she built is wild. This reads like, I stole her chair and now I'm complaining it doesn't fit. Girl, you couldn't even handle Zuri's brand launch. But the real devastation came from a place Vanessa never saw coming. Former clients. People she'd inherited. People who had stayed quiet until now. They started commenting, quote posting and sharing screenshots from old decks. Praise that had once been given to me now resurfaced with bitter irony. One client posted a side-by-side comparison of their brand strategy before and after the divorce. Caption. Call it emotional if you want. One side sold out. One side fell apart. It trended by nightfall. By Thursday morning, Vanessa had restricted comments. By Friday she pulled the article link from her bio. And by Monday the editor of Creative State Weekly issued a clarification statement. Our feature on Vanessa Quinn was meant to highlight her work in branding. We do not endorse any personal disparagement toward previous leadership at Grayson Agency. You know you've messed up when even your own profile becomes an apology. Meanwhile, Finch House's inbox was overflowing. We received 37 new business inquiries in 48 hours. 3 of them were from companies Vanessa had courted but failed to close. One was a direct referral from someone inside her own agency. Miles didn't say a word. At least not to me. But a contact of mine, Avery, the ex-CFO I'd brought into Finch House, got a screenshot from one of his old colleagues. Miles threw a chair in the strategy room. Told Vanessa, you had one job, not to piss off the internet. There was the unraveling. You can only fake legacy for so long. Eventually the cracks show. And when the woman you replaced is still winning, quietly, consistently with every move looking like art, the pressure doesn't just mount. It crushes. That weekend I took a walk through the Venice canals. No makeup. No assistant. No plans. Just the sound of water lapping against brick and the feel of my own name echoing in headlines. Lena Harper. Not Miles' ex-wife. Not the one before Vanessa. Just mine. When I returned home a letter was waiting. Hand-delivered. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of ivory paper. Lena, if you're willing I'd like to meet. Not about business. Not about the agency. Just clarity. Closure maybe. You owe me nothing. But I'd like a chance to say what I never did before. Miles. No signature flourish. Just that one name. Plain. I folded the letter once, then again. And placed it in the drawer with the rest of the artifacts. The wedding invite. The first campaign sketch. The original agency mission I had written by hand. It belonged in the past. Where he did. The sky was overcast the morning he appeared. The kind of gray that doesn't quite storm, but hums with the promise of something unraveling. I had just finished a debrief with Delilah about a new client onboarding sequence. She was halfway through a story about accidentally calling a venture capitalist Dad, when my assistant buzzed the line. Lena, there's someone here to see you. I didn't ask who. Her voice said enough. Is it him? Pause. Then, yes. I stared at the glass door of my office, where the Finch House logo shimmered softly in etched silver. The name I built. The brand I claimed. The future that had no room left for ghosts. I stood. Send him in. Miles looked smaller. That was the first thing I noticed. Not physically but in presence. Imposture. In the way his shoulders sloped slightly forward like his own decisions had finally begun to weigh him down. He wore a camel coat he once claimed made him look continental. Today it looked like a costume. Hi, he said. Hello, Miles. He looked around. My office was clean, warm, minimalist. Every item chosen intentionally. Nothing excessive. Nothing careless. So this is Finch House, he said almost reverently. Yes. It's beautiful. It's mine. That last word landed between us like a quiet blade. He didn't sit until I gestured for him to. Even then, he perched on the edge of the chair like a student summoned to the principal's office. I stayed standing. What can I do for you? He ran a hand through his hair, still stylish but thinning now. Stress will do that. I'm not here to ask for anything, he said. Not business. Not a favor. Just clarity. I said nothing. I thought I understood everything about you, he continued. Even when you left. Even when you signed the papers without fighting. You thought that was weakness. I thought it was detachment, he admitted. Like maybe you never cared enough to resist. My voice was calm. And now I think it was the strongest thing anyone's ever done to me. He looked at the walls, lined with creative briefs, framed sketches, a photo of Zuri's launch party at the MoMA rooftop. Women who had stayed. Women who had risen. You built this while I was playing Empire. No, I said. I built this because you were playing Empire. His gaze flicked to me. You needed an audience. I needed a legacy. Different motivations. Different outcomes. He nodded slowly. Vanessa's leaving. I know. She said she couldn't do it anymore. That the narrative had turned against her. That she wasn't meant to be a leader. I said nothing. She also said, he continued, that I had underestimated the power of women who don't scream when they're being erased. That almost made me smile. Almost. I wanted to see you because I finally understand something, he said. You didn't leave because I loved someone else. You left because I treated your brilliance like background music. I stared at him. Say that again. He blinked. What? Say it again. Word for word. His voice faltered slightly but he repeated it. You treated my brilliance like background music, I echoed. And now you're sitting in silence wondering why the room feels so empty. He swallowed hard. I lost everything, he said. No, I corrected. You gave everything away. You just assumed I wouldn't notice. A long silence passed between us. Outside the office, the sound of heels on polished floors. Laughter from the marketing pod. Finch House pulsed with movement. With life. He looked up at me, eyes rimmed in tiredness. Is there any part of you that still misses what we had? I took a breath. Then calmly, I miss who I was before I had to shrink myself to fit beside you. He didn't respond. So I continued. And I grieved the version of me that kept begging for eye contact while you stared at your reflection in other women. A beat. I don't miss us. I miss the woman who believed it could have worked. He stood slowly. Thank you, he said. For letting me say it. You needed to. Not for me, for you. He looked toward the window. Then back at me. I hope Finch House buries us. It won't, I said softly. It'll outlive us. He turned to leave. But paused at the door. I read the interview Vanessa gave, he said. She tried to make you small. She tried, I agreed. He gave me one last look. You were never small. And then he walked out. I stayed standing for a while. Not because I was shaken. But because something in me had clicked fully into place. He had come looking for forgiveness. But I had already made peace with never needing it. That afternoon I hosted a round table with 5 female founders. Women whose brands had been sidelined, silenced, or stolen by the same men who now watched us rebuild from afar. I opened the meeting with a toast. To the women who never raised their voices but raised empires instead. The last email I got that day was from an industry journalist I trusted. Lena, heard rumors that Miles is shutting down Grayson agency before the quarter ends. Want to comment? I thought about it. Then typed back. Let the silence speak. It was a Sunday morning when the news broke. No press release. No curated goodbye post. No farewell bouquet wrapped in neutral-toned ribbon. Just a 2-line internal email that leaked within the hour. From Vanessa Quinn. To Grayson agency staff. Effective immediately, I am stepping down as creative director. I wish you all the best. No signature. No heart emoji. No explanation. The agency hadn't even opened for the week before the whispers started. Delilah called me 5 minutes after the screenshot surfaced. You win, she said. I wasn't playing. That's what makes it worse for them. By noon, 3 former Grayson clients had reached out to Finch House asking to reconsider their current branding roadmap. One even admitted, we didn't want to leave, but it hasn't felt the same without your team. I read the message while drinking my tea and watching the rain lace patterns across the office windows. There was no satisfaction in it anymore. Just clarity. The next day Vanessa showed up at my door. Not the office. My home. It was early evening just before twilight and I had left the gate open for the groceries. I found her standing awkwardly in the front path, a tote bag slung over one shoulder and the look of a woman with nothing left to defend. I didn't speak. Just stood on the steps, arms crossed. I know this is strange, she said. I won't stay long. I raised an eyebrow. I just needed to see you. Now that was strange. I gestured slightly. You're already here. She took a few slow steps forward but stopped short of the door. I left. I know. She nodded. You probably knew it was coming before I did. I didn't respond. I thought this job would make me feel important, she continued. Like I'd finally earned the kind of respect I used to envy. I stayed silent. But the truth is, I was never running the agency. I was just borrowing your ghost. That made me pause. I sat in the same office, touched the same files, pitched the same clients, but it all felt like walking through someone else's house. And you thought painting the walls beige would make it yours? Her lips twitched. Almost a smile. Almost a sob. Maybe. She looked tired. Not disheveled, not dramatic. Just worn in a way that made her seem human. Less curated. Less polished. More real than she'd ever allowed herself to be. I blamed you for a long time, she said. Told myself you were too cold. Too quiet. Too perfect. But really I was just terrified I'd never measure up. You didn't need to, I said. You needed to do something original. I didn't know how. Then you never should have tried to lead. She didn't argue. Instead she reached into her tote and pulled out a small folder. These are the last of the financials from the months before I left. Miles doesn't know I saved them. I didn't take it. Why are you giving me this? Because I finally believe what everyone else already knew. That I was the real founder? No, she looked up at me. That you were never trying to destroy us. You just refused to disappear. That stilled me. Vanessa placed the folder on the garden bench and stepped back. I'll go, she said. But before I do, there's something I should tell you. I raised an eyebrow. Miles wanted to give up 2 months ago. Said the agency didn't feel like his anymore. Said he didn't recognize it. And what did you say? I told him, she said softly, that maybe it never really was. She left without another word. I waited until the sound of her shoes faded down the driveway before I sat on the bench and opened the folder. Inside, ledger summaries, expense reports, unpaid invoices, and a note with one line in Vanessa's handwriting. It was always bleeding. I just kept painting over the stains. That night I called Avery, my numbers guy. He reviewed the papers and called back with his voice sharp and certain. If this is accurate, Miles has 6 weeks before the agency collapses under its own debts. I leaned back in my chair. Should I step in? I asked. Do you want to? No. Then don't. Let it fall the way he let you fall. And so I did. 3 weeks later it happened. Grayson agency filed for dissolution. No headlines. Just a quiet listing on the state's corporate registry. The same day, Zuri sent me a screenshot of Miles' LinkedIn update. Taking time to reflect and rebuild. Life has a way of showing you what matters. Zuri captioned it. Translation, I dropped the crown and now I'm shocked someone picked it up. I laughed for the first time in days. That evening as I watered the jasmine vines on my patio, I felt it. Not joy. Not victory. Not even vindication. Just stillness. The kind that comes when the noise fades and all that's left is your own heartbeat, steady and unbothered. It arrived in a plain envelope. No return address. No forwarding details. Just my name handwritten in a script I hadn't seen in over a year. Lena Harper. The mail had been sorted and stacked by my assistant as usual. She hadn't noticed the envelope because from the outside it looked like nothing. But the moment I touched it, I knew. Miles. Even the silence in the ink felt familiar. I set it on my desk and stared at it through the rest of the afternoon. Meetings passed. Calls were taken. Contracts reviewed. But that letter sat like gravity on the corner of my workspace. It wasn't anger that kept me from opening it. It was the knowledge that I didn't need anything from him anymore. And maybe that's what gave me the power to finally unfold the paper just after sunset. Alone with the lights low and my phone turned off. Lena. If this never reaches you, that's fine. If you open it and throw it away, that's fine too. I'm writing because there's no one else left to tell this to. And because I've learned that the worst kind of grief is the kind that never gets acknowledged. You didn't destroy me. You didn't even try. But watching everything fall apart without your name next to mine has shown me something I couldn't see while you were standing beside me. You were the agency. The relationships. The retention. The culture. The vision. All of it. I was the mouthpiece. You were the meaning. After the articles, after Vanessa left, after the clients pulled out, I sat in the empty conference room, alone. I played one of your old branding videos on the big screen just to hear your voice narrating it. It was better than any campaign we've done since. And I cried. Not because I lost the business, but because I realized I had treated a lighthouse like background furniture. And by the time I noticed the storm, you'd already saved yourself. You were never too quiet. I was just too loud to listen. I don't expect forgiveness. I wouldn't know what to do with it if I had it. But I wanted you to know, before I go, that the best thing I ever built was the version of myself I was when I was still worthy of your partnership. And I let it rot. I hope you keep building. I hope you never look back. Miles. The paper trembled slightly between my fingers, but my hands were steady. I folded it once. Twice. Then slid it back into the envelope and placed it in the drawer where I kept the rest of my past. The original agency mission statement. The brand concept sketch for Zuri's first drop. The business card that bore Mrs. Lena Grayson. A time capsule of a life I had evolved out of. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't moved. But because grief for me was no longer rooted in loss. It lived in wasted potential. In the recognition that love alone doesn't build legacies. Work does. Choice does. Silence does when used with precision. The next morning I walked into the Finch House studio just before the rest of the team arrived. I placed the latest campaign proofs across the presentation table and ran my hand over the high-gloss prints. Every image, every tagline, every brand identity. Mine. Not co-signed. Not borrowed. Not compromised. At 10:22 a.m., a news alert buzzed on my lock screen. Breaking. Grayson Agency officially shutters amid financial collapse. Sources close to the firm confirm all remaining assets will be liquidated by end of quarter. I read it once. Then powered off my phone. That evening, I donated a portion of Finch House's quarterly earnings to a mentorship fund for young women of color in creative industries. I named it after a phrase Miles used to mock. The Soft Power Initiative. Because, of course, he never understood the word soft. Was never the opposite of strong. It was the evolution of it. Delilah brought wine to the office that night. Zuri joined us. We sat in the lounge under warm lights, laughing about the podcast, the article, the day Miles confused a TikTok trend with a viable brand strategy. I leaned back and took it all in. My people. My pace. My empire. No ghosts. No crumbs. No apology needed. The summit hall buzzed with a polished, expectant energy. Rows of velvet chairs curved toward the stage in perfect symmetry, a soft golden spotlight spilling over the podium that bore the Finch House crest. It was strange standing back here. I had once been the woman who sat in the second row, silently taking notes, wondering if I'd ever be worthy of a microphone. Now they waited for my words. I stepped out onto the stage to quiet applause. Not explosive. Not celebrity loud. But warm. Intentional. The applause of people who had followed my journey, who had seen what I built from the ground up. Without screaming, without spectacle, without scandal. I didn't speak immediately. I let the silence stretch because silence had always been my strongest tool. Then softly, they always asked me when I knew it was time to leave. The agency. The marriage. The illusion. I didn't. Not at first. You rarely do. What I did know was that I had stopped recognizing my own reflection. The crowd sat in stillness. They called me too careful, too calculated, too composed. But what they never saw was that everything they dismissed was what saved me. I scanned the front row. Delilah. Avery. My people. My tribe. I smiled. I didn't raise my voice. I raised an empire. After the keynote there was the usual mingling. Photos, conversations, offers to collaborate. I shook hands, signed a few books, accepted 2 flower bouquets and dodged 3 podcast pitches. I was sipping sparkling water near the glass atrium when I saw him. Miles. Dressed simply. No entourage. No assistant trailing behind him this time. He looked real. And for the first time in years, not rehearsed. He waited until the crowd around me thinned before approaching. Hi, he said quietly. I nodded. I didn't expect to see you here. I wasn't sure I'd come, he admitted. But I wanted to hear you speak. I arched a brow. Did it sting? He chuckled, the sound more tired than amused. No. It healed. That surprised me. I thought seeing you like this might break me, he said. But it didn't. It humbled me. I didn't do this to humble you, Miles. I know, he said. That's what humbles me the most. He held out a small envelope. No return address this time, I said dryly. His lips quirked into a half smile. It's not a letter. Just a copy of the last board vote. I opened it. A document confirming the final dissolution of the Grayson agency. Every asset liquidated. Every shareholder signed off. Final valuation. Less than 1/3 of what we'd built together. He waited for a reaction. I gave him none. You could have stopped it, he said quietly. Stepped in. Taken control. But then I'd still be tied to it. And to me, he added softly. I looked him in the eye. I chose peace. He nodded. Then hesitantly. I saw the mentorship initiative you launched. The soft power fund. It's brilliant. Thank you. He paused again. I'm thinking of teaching. That caught me off guard. Teaching. Brand ethics. Narrative responsibility. How to build without stealing. I gave a slow nod. That's a start. He looked around at the crowd still gathered near the atrium. Women hugging, laughing, taking selfies beside Finch House banners. Then back at me. You did it, Lena. You became everything I thought I was. I tilted my head. No. I became everything you never saw. He left after that. No dramatic goodbye. No maybe someday. Just a quiet walk out the same door I once ran through in a blazer 2 sizes too big and a heart cracked in half. I watched him go. Nothing heavy. Just the weight of finality lifting. Later that night I returned to my apartment, still filled with jasmine and curated warmth, and opened my window to let the city breeze in. On my desk sat a single photo I kept framed. Not of Miles. Not of the agency. But of me. In the first Finch House brainstorming session. Hair tied back. No makeup. Laughing hard at something Delilah had said. In that photo I was already free. I just hadn't realized it yet. I lit a candle. Poured a glass of tea. And pulled out a fresh notepad. At the top of the page I wrote. Phase 2, Legacy. Then smiled. Because survival wasn't the end of the story. It was just the first draft. The end.